So we are going to call the meeting to order. Just make sure you're in the right place. This is the Pupil Services and Special Education Committee meeting. So if that's not the one you meant to go to, you can leave. You missed the one that was at 6.
This feels like my interview.
So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Judy McGinnis. I am the chair of the Pupil Services and Special Education Committee, which is also made up of J.P. Prego and Mike Elliott are the 3 board members. We are lucky enough to have our superintendent, Dr. Roche, here today. He's not always with us, but he is here with us today. Dr. Farina is always with us for our special ed and Pupil Services. We also have Carol Giblin and Amy Coyle here. Carol is our director of special ed, and Amy is our supervisor of special ed. And we do deal a lot with special education in this committee, but it is not all we do. We deal with all of the services that go around the education portion. So that's why we often have our meetings with right back to back with C&I, because they do seamlessly move right into them. So now that I've pretty much brought you up to speak on everything. I was saying all that time. So did both of you have a chance to look over the previous minutes?
Yes.
Great. Can I get a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Awesome. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Anybody opposed? No. Okay. So the entire meeting tonight, we are going to focus on social and emotional learning. We're going to have a wonderful presentation. I am going to say the best thing for us to do, I think, tonight is to let them do their whole presentation, because they've got props and everything. So although normally we have a lot of back and forth in this meeting, where we stop and ask a lot of questions. I think for tonight, it'd be better if we just kind of like jot your questions down if you have any, and let them do their whole presentation, and then we can ask some questions. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah.
Okay, just for this particular one, like I said, it's one that's near and dear to me. If you can't tell, I'm a little excited about this one. I think social and emotional learning is probably one of the most important aspects of education that has finally come to the forefront. So there's a lot of misconceptions about it. People don't quite understand its purpose. So we are going to let Dr. Farina get started.
And I am going to stand just because I have to press the button a couple times. But I certainly, I'll stand here and do the presentation. However, I'm not alone.
Right.
This district has, in all the years I've been here, made a very significant commitment to addressing the social emotional learning needs of kids, all kids. I couldn't have said it more beautifully, Judy. This is one of those places where curriculum and instruction and service delivery are married inextricably. You cannot separate them. This is about the health of every child who comes to Upper Kirk. And so tonight, I have lots of friends with me. I don't stand alone in this commitment. And so if you don't know, we can do some quick introductions. We have Todd Ambler, our high school assistant principal, Allie Stevens, principal at Marlboro, Brian Callum, assistant at the middle school, Jeff Fries, welcome back, principal at Hereford. And then it's the rest of the team here who you have seen for the last hour. Amy and Carol got their introductions. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Judy. There are some misconceptions around SEL and what it is and how it's delivered. So tonight we want to talk to you about just that, what it is and where you can find it in the district. We have made this a hands-on if you want to look at it, because there is no hiding it. This is a place where there are curriculum ties, though. And I chair the policy committee, so we know all the rules and regulations. Everybody's allowed to see that. So we want it in full and open and transparent conversation about it. So I think what we need to understand is really it's about competencies and experiences that people have to understand and manage their emotions, to achieve positive goals, set them, feel and show empathy towards one another, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So when we're talking about SEL, it's really about every person being able to achieve those competencies. Every person achieves them differently. Every person learns how to achieve them differently. But it really is also tied in the school forum around building a positive culture. The goal of doing this work is to promote social and emotional skills, classroom behavior, academic achievement, and then on the other side, to really prevent some of the stuff we've talked about historically in this forum and others. Conduct problems, aggressive behavior, emotional distress. So the focus of the district on SEL is to achieve these goals. We actually laid it and embedded it in our last previous comprehensive plan. So we called it out because of the data we had, some of the concerns that teachers were voicing. There were some of those issues. So what did we need to do? We needed to investigate and we needed to lay in SEL. Those competencies look like this: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, and relationship skills. And, you know, I wanted to show this because I feel like it's important. Other people have said it far better than I could. So I am going to show you this. So I think it does a nice job. Can you hear it?
Think about the young people in your lives and all the different places where they're learning about themselves, how to relate to others, and work together on goals. How can we intentionally create learning experiences that will help all young people develop and maintain positive relationships, become lifelong learners, and contribute to a more caring, just world? Educators, researchers, community members, families, and the students themselves agree what we need is social and emotional learning, or SEL. SEL is the process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that help us to understand ourselves, connect with others, achieve our goals, and support our communities. We all need opportunities to learn and engage in environments where we feel safe, valued, and a sense of belonging. So how does SEL help schools, families, and communities work together so that all young people have these kinds of learning experiences and achieve success in education, careers, and life? CASEL's framework identifies 5 areas of competence that together help us develop a healthy sense of who we are, manage stress, understand the views of others, and work together to create schools and communities where everyone can grow their strengths and interests. Self-awareness is about how we think about ourselves and who we are. It includes understanding our culture, our thoughts, feelings, and what we believe we're capable of, and understanding how these things can influence our behaviors and beliefs. Self-management is the ability to manage those emotions, thoughts, and actions in different situations so that we can achieve individual and collective goals. This includes coping with stress and anxiety, persevering through challenges, and taking action to create positive change. Social awareness is how we understand others, how we learn to take different perspectives and empathize even with people who are different from us. It also includes understanding how the broader norms and systems around us influence how we develop and create a sense of belonging. Relationship skills are how we connect and engage effectively with others, and how we form lasting friendships and connections. This includes communicating clearly, solving problems together, managing conflict and disagreements, and standing up for ourselves and the rights of others. Lastly, responsible decision-making is how we put it all together to make caring and constructive choices. This includes thinking critically about consequences, analyzing the impact of our actions on ourselves and others, and identifying solutions that support our collective well-being. We continue to develop and practice SEL throughout our lives and can adapt and apply these competencies across different contexts and cultures. How we develop SEL is impacted by our environments, which is why we need to work together across classrooms, schools, families, and communities. In the classroom, students can be explicitly taught SEL skills and also can practice and apply SEL during core subjects, like discussing different perspectives in social studies and language arts, or collaboratively problem solving in science or math. SEL is most effective when supported by evidence-based programs and trusting relationships where students are treated as partners in their learning. Beyond the classroom, SEL can be intentionally promoted throughout the school experience, from the way they're greeted in the morning to how discipline practices are carried out and how adults themselves develop and model positive relationships and the SEL competencies. Outside of school, families and caregivers provide the earliest and ongoing learning and interactions for their children, so it's important that schools listen to and authentically partner with families to help shape SEL priorities and strategies for supporting their children. Similarly, when schools partner with community organizations to align their efforts, SEL opportunities can be strengthened and students benefit even more. With SEL, we can help create schools and learning spaces where all young people feel connected, inspired, engaged, and ready to contribute to the world around them.
So, whoops, I always do that.
I've seen this before.
So, tonight we're here to talk to you about how this wasn't happenstance, right? So I can confidently say that SEL and the competencies just described and the actions that surround those are both foundational, integrated, and responsive. We have made that decision, we made that decision years and years ago, that we would honor that work in the work of the school district. So what do I mean when I say that? It's foundational. When you look to the mission and vision statements in the Upper Perkiomen School District, you will see attributes of SEL competencies. We support, we partner, we empower. Our learning model in the district, you can see we don't shy away from the conversation. We acknowledge that that work is foundational. We put it at the bottom of everything else. All of the strategic decisions of the district, we acknowledge from the very beginning of this work that social emotional learning, resiliency, cultural proficiency, and inclusion are foundational to every graduate. Every single one. That when we pictured a graduate, we knew we had to work in those areas. And then we have designed learning experiences in the classroom that get us there. It's integrated. We have spent a lot of time and effort in this committee talking about MTSS. Honestly, many of you have been here. We have heard about the disruptors, right? We've talked about the observable behaviors. But what we've done as a district is reframe the conversation to say, how did we get there? We can't just focus on the symptoms. We have to actually treat the cause. And we've done that very strategically through the second step, inclusion K-8. We're moving to K-8. We've added some strategic support. And then I can say, and I'm very proud of the work, that Tier 3. We've added resources in the form of personnel, but also in the form of outpatient therapies. We work with agencies regularly. This is an area that I think that you can easily see as a district. We have integrated those principles. Every time a child struggles to possess those competencies, we continue to offer them more and more and more in order for them to demonstrate them every single day. And it's responsive. Another thing that we do in this committee regularly is I present. I present the results of 2 different surveys in the district. One is the PA Climate, which is given annually from grades 3 through 12. That's to talk to us about how kids feel, how connected they are, how safe, what they think about their school, what they think about their teachers. Those are all a reflection of the competencies embedded in SEL. The PACE survey, given every 2 years in grades 6, 8, 10, and 12, also a reflection. There's a whole section in the PACE survey. Last year, we did a very, very deep dive in this committee of what kids are telling us about connection to an adult, positive behaviors, And so that work showed us historically that we needed to continue to move the pendulum in the area of SEL. And so we, as administrators, your team, have made a lot of operational instructional decisions for kids to support their growth in this area. One of those steps is just that. Are we sure every kid knows the skills? Have they been taught it? We can't make assumptions about what kids learn at home. It would be wonderful if we could, but we can't. And so that explicit instruction, that very fundamental step that we've taken, which did not exist when I arrived, but we started talking about it in this committee, was, how are we teaching kids that explicit expectation around that area? And so we implemented second step, and I have to say my friends in the curriculum department and our principals have done a beautiful job leading that in their respective buildings and through that department. But this is curriculum, right? This is not a program. This is teaching and learning. We don't want to make any assumption. We want to make sure that every child is taught those skills, giving them the benefit of learning. So, there's a lot of research around what that is, but it is an evidence-based approach. In the world of pupil services and special education, there has to be evidence. And in this particular circumstance, there is a lot of evidence to say that this is the appropriate and fun way to learn. So I'll let you read it. I did a presentation several years ago. We actually ran a training. We talked in our previous committee about work that leads to professional development. Understanding trauma and trauma-informed schools is work that I've been doing on behalf of the district. I even work with the state around trauma and understanding that kids have adverse experiences. They bring with them this backpack of stuff. And you have no idea how heavy that backpack is. And so you have to be prepared to help them navigate that. We have to understand that, in their experience, the economic situation, abuse, alcoholism, homelessness, those are the types of things our teachers see day in and day out. And so we really wanted them to implement this universal program to assist kids in this area. And then language. Language is so powerful in a really good way and sometimes not in a really good way. But second step brings a formalized language to our community of learners, our teachers. We don't have to make those assumptions as educators about what the child learned the grade before. You can hear this. And I have administrators in the room here. We told you an example on Saturday when Kim and I were in the kindergarten wing at Hereford, and we were not following the rules, and they were very respectful, This is like, excuse me. They have learned that language and they understand it. But it gives them a tool. It gives them the skills necessary to navigate. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Kim.
No, I would just say we've heard from students, teachers, administrators that common language has been critically important in relating with one another and being successful in the classroom. Sarah, was one of the first things you said.
Yeah, it was very evident very quickly that they were adopting this language. I have a fourth grader at the 4-5 Center, and she regularly brings home the second step language. It's funny when she does it, but it's sticking, and the kids are really buying in and embracing it. So it's been wonderful.
So, and there's been a lot of question about what does it look like, right? So, it's an open book, literally. But I wanted to give you an example of a first grade video, just so you have a frame of reference. So each of the lessons has a lesson plan, of course, and they're intentionally scripted, and they have a topic. So this first grade lesson is on feeling frustrated. I know nobody's been there. And so they always do this brain builder. I will skip that for the sake. But it opens up. And the kids see this picture. And the teacher has the opportunity to ask them, how do you think this child is feeling? What do you think? And to be able to see it and describe it and talk about visualizing that emotion, right? Reading people's body language is a huge skill that I think we take advantage of. We don't. Well, maybe. That sometimes we don't. Kids sometimes don't recognize what they're seeing in front of them. Here's another example. What might this girl be feeling? Why do you think she might be feeling that way? Right? So we're giving kids the opportunity to practice the skill of observation. And then they give them a scenario.
Wow, Nate! I can't believe you made this rocket for me! And it can really fly? Yep, and guess what else I brought? What? Stickers to decorate it! Nice! Here, you can put stickers on the top part. Okay, and you can put the stripes on the bottom part. Maybe Abuela can take us to the park and we can launch it. This is gonna look so good. I hope so. I want it to be perfect. But these stickers are really small. They're so hard to get on straight.
So then it allows them time to process through those types of scenarios, to talk about them, and then give them a strategy, right? Things like belly breathing, things like taking time, those asking for help. So it's giving kids a safe space to experience those common emotions, giving them language to address them, and giving them strategies to internally address them. So that's really the explicit instruction portion. I did give you an 8th grade example, but I think the topics obviously evolve as the kids get older. And so in this particular example, it's a little bit different in that we take on topics that they might be experiencing and ask them to use some evidence or some information in order to, openly discuss an experience that they might be having. This one is about the environment and where we're seeing bullying. And, I think in this particular committee, we've talked about the honest truth, right? We've showed data from PA Climate and PACE. It's not very different than what you're going to see from a lot of other districts nationwide, where kids do say, I am bullied. And so really the intention of Second Step is to unpack those types of realities, talk about where they might experience it, talk about what it actually is. To be able to operationally define it for kids is often important. As an elementary principal, I heard I'm being bullied, and we would have those very delicate conversations about, let's talk about it. You're having friendship issues for sure, but that feels bad in the moment. And then it has them do a survey, and then compared to some national data on bullying, but that's just an example of the evolution of the program. So it is different. And then when your kids are struggling through that, so we talked about that bottom tier, right? We're going to make sure every kid gets this. But let's be honest, there are kids who are going to even struggle. And so what else do we give them? We did a presentation
Last May.
Mm-hmm. I felt like it was in the fall, but boy, how time flies.
I thought it was too.
And what we said is, in the world of student need, we can give you this, and you may not acquire all those skills. And so COMCAT in our presentation really is an intervention program, and it's really about now remember, parents could opt in or opt out. It's not required, but then they could participate in the CalmCat curriculum, which required them to participate in small mini sessions. And so, you know, that's an even more specific intervention. It is tailored to address kids who have some more significant needs, social needs, emotional needs, behavioral needs. It does involve screeners to identify who those kids might be and offer them additional support. And then really it's to unpack those barriers of being successful with their peers, in school. I don't know if either of you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I think when we brought CalmCat in, it was a specific initiative targeted towards K-3, and it is very much aligned with Second Step that all of our learners are getting. But the one thing I really liked, to Dr. Farina's point a little bit earlier, is that CalmCat coaching piece, because it pairs the child with a trusted adult in the building. And right now, Marlborough and Hereford, these are people that are not their classroom teacher, it's a counselor, or somebody who's more of a neutral third party that they can really get to know. And through the process of checking in daily and doing some targeted skill support, these kids are getting to make that meaningful connection with an adult that will hopefully continue to improve their connection to the school and to their learning. So that was the one piece of this program we really liked.
So that just started. You know, this is in its infancy. This is one of the areas that emerged in our work here in Pupil Services, that we needed to continue to refine some of those interventions and supports. You know, beyond kids who are not responsive to these types of interventions, we run a lot of groups. We have student assistance counselors at our buildings who do more therapeutic type supports, very specific, very strategic one-on-one interventions. They are therapists, they don't practice in the buildings. They don't do therapy, they do skill development, just because therapy is a whole different ballgame in the school setting. So those are our curriculum efforts. You know, when you saw that video and you saw the classroom circle, that's really what that is intended for. This is the curriculum facet. However, we have taken a lot, when we expand that circle and talk about school-wide efforts, I can assure you we've all heard of PBIS. My friends here from the elementary schools have been talking about PBIS since 2016, 17. I think it was my last presentation in 2015 where we started it and we said we need to do something. And so, just for context sake, again, I'm going to share for those of you who may not know.
So I've got my essay written, and I've been working on it for about a
You do
week.
need Grammarly.
So now I'm going to show you how I use Grammarly.
So the other day, a friend of mine asked me, what is PBIS, in 5 minutes or less. So here you go. So what's PBIS? PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. It's also called PBS, and it's probably the most widely used school climate and behavior program in the world because it reduces problem behavior and increases student and teacher well-being. It moves the school from being punitive to more positive. The reason we want to use school-wide PBIS is that it prevents problem behavior in the first place so that we can help kids and teachers build better relationships and we can increase learning. Often a school will see a 60% reduction in problem behavior in just the first year. PBIS is a framework developed by researchers from the University of Oregon, and they studied what works in school and classroom discipline. Where were the safest schools and where were the best classrooms? What did they all have in common? And what they came up with was basically a list of what to do. PBIS is not a program or a kit that you can just buy. It's actually just a list of best practices that lead to safe, positive schools with happy kids and teachers. On the list, you'll find these 4 important components. First, establish school-wide expectations. Next, teach the school-wide expectations directly and regularly to the students. Next, create a positive reinforcement system for your school. And then, respond to challenging behavior with consistent consequences. So the first thing you do is you establish school-wide expectations to create a consistent system across the school. Research shows that we need to narrow these down to just 3 to 5 in order for them to be memorable. The expectations you choose should target all forms of behavior, and the most common example is be safe, be respectful, be responsible, maybe be kind. And then you define what those values will look like in action by explicitly describing the guidelines for every setting in your school. How do you want kids to behave in the bathrooms, in the hallways, in classrooms? And when we make the rules and the expectations, we state them positively. So it's better to say, keep your hands and your feet to yourself, than it is to say, don't hit. And that's because research shows we're more likely to comply with do requests than don't requests. So when we say walk please, we're telling students exactly what we expect. The next thing to do is to teach the expectations directly to the students. Ideally, you'd have more in-depth teaching at the beginning of the year and after winter and spring breaks, like a rules roundabout, and then you follow up with weekly review lessons throughout the year. The very best way to teach something is on location, taught by the staff member who's going to be there to monitor the kids. So the librarian teaches the library lesson, the art supervisor teaches the playground lesson. Another great way to teach students is through classroom circles, particularly for expectations and rules that kids have a lot of opinions and emotions about, like cell phones. Circles help students feel like they're part of a decision-making process, that they helped create the rules, so they're more likely to follow them, they understand them. And the more consistent that staff are, the less stressful the school environment is, because teachers are more predictable and less reactive. Then after students know what's expected of them, create a positive reinforcement system for your school. Most schools you'll see a ticket system with lots of verbal praise to reinforce the positive behaviors. We should strive for 4 positive comments to every correction, or 4 to 1. What's really important to remember is that when you teach an expectation, be ready to give lots of positive praise when kids are doing the newly learned appropriate behavior. That's how we get the new behaviors to stick. We use positive reinforcement systems because the research shows you get more of the behavior you pay attention to. And then, respond to challenging behavior with consistent consequences that are restorative and teaching in nature. When kids don't demonstrate the right behaviors, give useful corrections, provide a lot of practice, and instead of sending kids away with suspensions and detentions, you want to provide interventions and support to help them change their behavior. Use restorative practices so they can accept responsibility and repair harm and restore relationships. School-wide PBIS is about first coming to agreements as staff. What are the expectations in our school? And then we teach those expectations regularly and in different ways. We offer lots of praise and we create a positive reinforcement system for our schools. And when students make mistakes, we give useful corrections. We give opportunities to practice in order to build the culture we want.
So when we think about PBIS, the work has really unfolded since it started in 2015. Hereford was our first school to begin implementation in the 16-17 school year. They achieved full implementation. We've done presentations from Hereford. Marlboro was right behind them in 17-18 with full implementation already achieved. And then we opened a new middle school, or a new elementary school. And Art, working simultaneously through opening a new building, we gave them some time. So they started year 1 in implementation in 2021, probably the most difficult school year of anybody's career, COVID. However, they did a wonderful job. It is a lot of work because they are creating lessons and teaching them and reinforcing them. And then right now, year 2 is underway. So we do have some principles here. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about their success in PBIS, why you find it beneficial.
I think it definitely connected our kids to the school building while we were out last year, which I think was a really great connection to have for them. We were doing morning announcements and still trying to keep up many of the positive things. We were giving shout outs digitally. Parents could submit shout outs. We've been really clear with our expectations. If you walk into our school building, I don't think you asked Mike earlier last week when you were with us, but our students can rattle them off. and we share examples every day about what those things look like when we're talking about our expectations. We have a recognition system in place where kids can get a V-Buck and go to the school store, and it is the best day of their entire week when they get those V-Bucks and they go. I have kids carrying bags full of them all around. We have a teacher that dresses up as the Super Bee, and she gives out little V-Bucks sometimes at our different assemblies and things that we have. We also have, clear expectations. We have a form when a discipline referral happens. We have a form that is restorative in nature that we follow up on, and that goes to the principals, and we then attack the situation from that arena. Sometimes we involve our school counselor, sometimes we involve our parents. So really, it was a lot of great work that happened way before I arrived at Marlboro, and we're just continuing to think about ways. Every month we meet, the PBIS team meets with great teacher representation as well as parent representation. We have a parent on our team and we discuss, we're continuing to evolve, even though we fully implemented, we're continuing to evolve and take suggestions and tweak and refine and share ideas. So it's been such a great thing to learn about and be a part of.
So what you might see up here is that it doesn't mention middle and high school. PBIS is truly intended to be a K-12 initiative. When we started this work, back then we agreed that elementary would lead the way. Often we talk about high school, but elementary was going to lead the way because all the kids coming up could benefit. There have been some bumps in the road in implementation. And so one of the things that we know is absent, we're teaching in elementary. We've created school structures to support that in elementary. And we have some things that are in place in middle and high school, but certainly we continue to need to talk about. Now in middle school, we'll have second step. So what is that structure? One of the other things that keeps coming up is that whole idea of restoration, repairing the harm with your behavior. And so restorative practices is inclusiveness, relationship building, and problem solving through methods such as circles, conflict resolution conferences, where really you're trying to work through. It is not intended to be a punitive approach. It is a solutions-based community approach to addressing discipline. And so I feel it's important to know, for all of you to know, because we are actually in our initial phases of restorative practices. Our secondary buildings, our secondary administrators who are here are pioneering this. Actually, many of our administrators have been through this training, including Sarah. I previously was in a former district. And so I want to give you a taste of what you are going to see with restorative practices.
My name is Josie Benson. I'm a 6th grade science teacher in Central Illinois, and I've been using Federation Union for it. Restorative practices provides meaningful responses so that we can address behavior, resolve the conflicts, repair relationships, and heal. For more on how to implement restorative practices in your school, watch free training videos and check out
so good, wasn't it? That made all the sense in the world.
Inclusion. Restorative widely used school climate initiatives in the world because it not only improves school culture and equity, but because it offers a more effective way of addressing discipline problems. So what is restorative practices exactly? So what is restorative practices in the schools? Restorative practices are a set of skills for building community and for responding to challenging behavior. Research shows that restorative practices not only reduces out-of-school suspensions, it increases school climate, strengthens relationship, and significantly improves equity in the discipline of schools, becoming an effective tool for inclusion. Restorative practices are really structured conversations. They fall on a continuum ranging from low-intensity, less planning, classroom-based strategies, all the way to higher intensity, more structured, office-managed strategies. It's helpful to integrate restorative strategies into a multi-tiered system of support so that these practices become part of the universal, targeted, and intensive interventions at a school. In Tier 1, you have the proactive components of restorative practices: classroom circles and affective language. Classroom circles, also called community
community circles strengthen relationships within the classroom, and then they address common classroom issues. We take turns, listen deeply, and we don't interrupt, cultivating trust and promoting equity. Once circles are a part of the classroom culture, they can be used to address difficult topics like bullying, race, or traumatic community events. In Tier 1, we also use affective statements to model how to express feelings and restorative questions to talk to students about their behavior. When you proactively establish a system of using circles in classrooms and consistently use affective language in everyday conversations, you have a solid foundation when responding to more serious incidents in Tiers 2 and 3. In Tier 2, we have more structured conversations like restorative chats, restorative mediation, and restorative circles, which usually take place outside of the classroom by another staff member. Instead of delivering punishments, judging, and scolding, we support the student to accept responsibility, to be accountable, and to make things right. A restorative chat is a short, informal conversation with a student regarding their behavior. The staff member uses the restorative questions to help the student reflect on their behavior, reintegrate them back into the classroom, and repair that relationship with the teacher. Restorative mediation helps resolve conflict and arguments between two students. Students have the opportunity to express how they've been affected by what happened, think about their actions and how it might have impacted others, and then make agreements together on how to move forward without the continued conflict. Restorative circles, also called harm circles, are in response to more serious incidents at school, and they bring together the people impacted by the incidents. This requires pre-meetings so that participants understand what questions will be asked, and then they agree to follow the guidelines. In a circle, the facilitator guides the participants to talk about what happened, who was affected, and how we can repair the harm. And in Tier 3, we have restorative conferences to respond to significantly disruptive or harmful incidents at school. And they're even more structured than circles, specific seating arrangements needed, and a script for the facilitator to follow. Conferences include those who did the harm and those who were harmed, as well as other people that were impacted. So while schools who implement restorative practices tend to have very few out-of-school suspensions, when it does happen, we use re-entry circles when the student returns so that we can make a plan of support for them and their families. Restorative practices give schools explicit, proactive structures to develop relationships, strengthen inclusion, and to build a culture of empathy and compassion. Then, when incidents of harm occur, restorative practices provides meaningful responses so that we can address the behavior, resolve the conflict, repair relationships, and heal.
So as you can see, with each of these, we continue to just layer the supports. Classroom, which is directed to the kids. PBIS, which is the structure of a school. Restorative practice is professional development for our staff in order to facilitate some of that work. So our implementation plan, truthfully, has started this year. There is a whole lot of training involved in becoming a trainer. It's a commitment, and so there are 2 courses that begin. It's Restorative Practices for Educators and Restorative Justice in terms of how to run those conferences. And then you have to use it. You have to practice it. You have to be able to model it. And then we participate in a Train the Trainer, professional development. This work is done through IIRP. It's honestly from our area. It came out of the Penridge, Sellersville area in its infancy. Palisade School District happened to be one of the pioneers. I'm in the movie from like 1997 or 2001. I look terrible, but that's okay. But it is work, and so it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, we're gonna look for it.
I actually looked, I tried to find it because I was going to play it. They have really significantly updated it. I think Alan was a student there as well.
I think I was a student in the movie. I think so.
I really have to find the video.
It's
Trouble.
Where's Jim? Jim
So that was the plan. As we talked about on Saturday at the board retreat, you know, ultimately we are trying to build the capacity of our staff to have that calming language. It is incredibly powerful to be able to give kids a forum to talk about the hurt that they may have experienced by somebody else. You know, people are not defined by their actions, they're defined by where they go with them and what they do with following them. And this is giving kids a safe place to say, I'm sorry. Or to say, that hurt my feelings. You know, I think many times, up and including all of us, want to say, that hurts my feelings. Please don't do that again. So this is a nice way for kids to create that forum. And you can see through Second Step and through PBIS, many of them already have some of that structures built in. This is giving our professional staff the language to help facilitate some of that dialogue, some of those guiding questions to ask kids. You know, not why did you do that, tell me what happened. You know, and so those are two very different conversations. So far, I believe Todd, Brian, Sarah, Carol, are you through it?
This month.
And
February.
And then a host of teachers have gone through these first couple trainings. There are other things we do. And so now we're talking about engaging the rest of our community. So we've gone through each of these circles around kids, and there are some other things that we do. We have integrated some mindfulness practices in the district. Todd Neiman actually presented at a Pupil Service meeting. And mindfulness, if you are not aware, is just a way to be present. To actually ground yourself in present. Not thinking about what happened or not thinking about what's going to happen in the past and the future and all that other stuff. But there are some teachers who use this with kids. Just take a minute, you do some belly breathing. I want you present. Because if you're of present mind, you can learn, we can talk, we can communicate. Some of the other things that we've done to establish that safe climate and culture, Link Crew was established through the support of the school board. That's our high school transition program. We have lots of Link Crew facilitators and kids who help transition 8th graders to 9th grade. Our middle school is going to be looking to add web, where we belong, where everyone belongs, which is the middle school version of Link Crew. And then we do things like the Great Kindness Challenge. We do celebrations. They have pep rallies. The middle school does celebrations for kids who demonstrate the behaviors that they're trying to teach kids. And then we really work on professional development. Mrs. Bash showed you a slide of the professional development for February and March. Make no mistake about it, secondary trauma, LGBTQ, language, self-care, those are all outgrowths of, we also have to support our staff. They have to be equipped to support kids, so we have to support them. So in Upper Perk, this is really what it boils down to. If anybody asks you how are we supporting kids in the area of social emotional learning, they're always integral. They are foundational to our mission and our vision. We have built those structures around kids. We have implemented curriculum. We have implemented school structures. We have given staff language. And at the bottom, we continue to talk about creating opportunities to engage kids in things that make them feel good and safe, to engage families in authentic relationships. On this very topic, how do we support you? Does anybody? That's a lot. But these are the folks who do the work. I get to talk about it, they actually do it. So we are here to answer any questions.
Sure. By the way, I love the backpack analogy. That was great. I mean, really, that's great because you never really know what's going on in somebody's life, you know. So that supportive, this is just awesome. All right. So one thing I sometimes hear from people is this, but I think that in the slides it's answered, right? And sometimes you hear, oh, it's all soft, right? But I saw on the slide, you know, reducing suspensions, reducing detentions and stuff like that. So it's not like that stuff isn't still there, right?
Right.
It's just that you're trying to avoid going there all the time, sort of thing.
Correct, and I think that certainly one of the challenges in restorative practices or using restorative practices has been, oh, so kids just get a free pass to behave that way. That's not, I mean, we certainly will impose our discipline rules. The question is, why are they doing it? And do they possess the skills to make a different decision?
Yeah.
And are those relationships strong enough that those kids can have a conversation? Repairing harm. Go ahead, Brian.
One thing that I think can't be overemphasized is the fact that we can use these practices to guide our discussions with students. For example, the manner in which I'm meeting with students when I'm investigating a situation can be restorative in nature. So I've looked at rephrasing the questions that I use, rephrasing the strategies, the conversational strategies that I'm using within those conversations to be more restorative in nature, and to touch on the things like, so how did you feel at this time? How do you think this made you, this other individual, feel? And getting kids to think about some of those things as we're working through that process. Now, when we're looking at those consequences, if it's a violation of our student code of conduct, we have a tiered system of consequences that go along with that. It very well could be that the first consequence for a given infraction is something where we do some kind of mediation or contact room or something like that, and we try to make that restorative in nature. Whereas step 2 for a given infraction might be like a detention or something like that. So they're still there. The idea is that we try to build those connections with students and use our restorative practices to get students to realize the impact of their actions to prevent it from getting to that point.
Right, right. And it's really powerful when it happens. Speaking of an experience that we both know about, there's a situation where maybe one little kid messed with another little kid at lunch, and it was the way it was handled was great, because then the one little boy who was messed with was telling me, he's like, no, everything worked out great then because of the way he handled it. It was awesome, right? So, yeah, no, there's definitely some benefits to it, but one of the things we hear is, but no, it's still there, man, but just we're trying to fix it before it's like a problem all the time. And if you could, in the situation that I just described, it worked out and then it was fine.
Yeah, and certainly
right? So that's what you want.
There are some infractions, that we probably elevate to discipline. Like those still exist.
Yeah, I think people just need to hear that.
Yep. Yeah.
So
the goal is, as Mr. Cowan said, is to create and foster a community. Your actions create emotions in other people, and it's really hard.
It's really
hard to say I'm sorry sometimes, and listen, and have to hear how other people feel. That's the beauty of that dialogue. The place that I came from, even kids got to talk to their teachers.
Yeah.
And that's a huge step for kids to be able to convey that message, and for teachers to be able to listen, and for kids to sometimes even hear I'm sorry from adults. Those are really powerful messages.
And you're not going to create that community by throwing kids in detention.
No.
Okay, that's mine.
I got a couple.
Go for it.
So first, in the video, the first video you showed, where they talked about what SAL actually is, they mentioned in there how it's for the students and for the families. Like, what do we do at Upper Perk to extend it to the families?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. So I would say part of the PBIS structure, and if you've seen any of our My Sky Alerts, is we talk about the work and share information about the work that is happening in our PBIS team with our communities. And I would say, again, we have parent representation on our committee to help inform what we're doing. And we were looking at ways to continue to connect with our families throughout the pandemic. So, parents can submit a shout out to us for anyone in our school, and that's included, and that helps continue that relationship and make sure that connection is built. So, you know, we're always thinking about other ways, but that's just one of the few ways where, you know, in our announcements too, we share like, here's parents, here's some ways that you can share this language at home with your child. You know, you can practice belly breathing, you can put your attendoscopes on, and we show them what that looks like. So there's a lot of cool things that we've done in non-traditional ways that have, you know, were spurred on by the pandemic too.
And we heard from a teacher today, Second Step has homework.
Yes.
There's a whole open site for parents
Yes.
for Second Step, so they can know what's going on at home. So it's a specific link that goes home that says,
Yep.
here's what we just did if you want to practice at home.
Yep.
And teachers say parents love that. They really do like to be involved with it and know what's happening in practice at home. We heard that even just tonight at our meeting.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you look at the feedback we got for our next comprehensive plan, that's definitely an area that people said, you know, either communicate with us differently so we understand it and or we get more experiences with it. And so, you know, the administrators are working with their buildings to sort of ascertain what can that look like. But that is an area that I think came out very strong from our stakeholder group that we needed to address more. Engagement, both student and parent. We do parent trainings. Our
Right.
attendance is sparse.
Right. You can only do so much. And by the way, I loved hearing the shout outs when I was home with my kids.
I know, they
Like,
love it too, right?
They
And
know it was
it's-
great.
Yeah, anybody can get one.
I'll just hit one more.
You can ask anything.
Yes.
I don't take your time. I don't need any time. I live with us.
All right, all right. The Comcat program. So you're saying that's in its infancy, it's brand new. Is that kind of why it's only, you said it's K through 3? So
Yeah,
is that just meant for K through 3? Is it just because this is brand new to us, we're just trialing it out here and we'll see it?
Right now, it's in its development as well, and so they market it to K to 5.
Okay.
But when we looked at the resources and we looked at the strategies, we really felt it was much more targeted to our K to 3 learners. And so we're hoping to be able to adopt something for the older kids, but right now that's really a K to 3 product. Yeah.
I just want to add, our teachers are really knocking it out of the park. They've had to submit, they already submitted screener information, which we've never had before on all kids, K to 3. And so we were able to use data to identify what kids might be in need of more. And then we went back to our teachers and said, talk about this child with me. Do they need more, and what are you seeing in the classroom? And they made suggestions and recommendations for that. So in order to implement the Comcat curriculum with particular students who need more. So that's been really effective. To have that data now, to say, kids, these are the kids we think we know, but now we definitely know.
Right. So the feedback so far has been pretty positive from the teachers.
Yeah.
And
We have a
everybody.
very high level of participation in both buildings. We're really excited about how it's going to go and to see the progress.
Just anecdotally today, a parent meeting, a parent struggling with a child at home, and was asking us in this parent meeting with our team and saying, what else can you provide for my kid at school? And so yes, second step for all of our kids, but what else can you provide to help my kid in terms of social emotional, or their emotional regulation? And it was very comforting to be able to say, well, listen, this is something that you've already signed your child up for, and we're moving forward. So we're really looking forward to having that as another tool, you know, in our bag of tricks, so to speak.
Yeah, it's all good.
I also wanted to share too, the language is common. There's some common language between Second Step and Comcat. They complement each other very well. You know, Second Step is taught to all of our K to 3 learners. Comcat's done more in a small group, but the language is common. You know, they're teaching some consistent things in both programs, so that's cool.
The PBIS. So we have it in the elementary schools right now. We just implemented it into the 4 or 5 center, but there's nothing in the secondary schools yet.
So there are structures in place, and you know, they have versions of structural support. So I don't know, Brian and Todd, if you want to talk about it, but they have an incentives group at the high school that Mr. Vigilante started when he was there, but some of that work is done. PBIS is a very scripted process in order to implement it. Our middle and high school have taken certain components of that, established rules, some common language, and an incentive portion it just doesn't look
It
the
looks-
same.
It looks
as
very
elementary.
different from the elementary level.
Okay.
And I'll say at the middle school level, it's not a full-blown PBIS that you would see in, a full PBIS school. There are elements, like Dr. Freeman mentioned, that are kind of built into what we do with teaching of expectations, our recognition. So we have incorporation of various events and activities, both for community building and to reinforce positive behaviors. But it's not a full-blown PBIS system.
Okay.
Which there's a lot of legwork, a lot of planning that needs to happen in order for a school to be a full PBIS school. Our elementary schools in the process leading up to their implementation did a ton of work, collaborative work within the schools themselves to really get themselves set up to implement that program.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing at the high school. There are several different incentives that are built in for students to be able to get at the high school level. This year currently through our climate committee at the high school, we're working to develop a positive principal referral, as well as positive staff referrals to be able to recognize the positive things that students and staff are doing. We're working to bring back some of those building celebrations and things. At a building level, we work very closely with Link Crew in that as well. So we're kind of working right now to kind of build those things back up, and we're looking at potentially having a virtual kindness wall to be able to recognize a lot of the positive things that our kids are doing. So we're starting to kind of build up that PBIS at the high school. It just looks different than what it would at elementary school.
Sure, and I'm glad to hear that, because the thing I just wanted to clarify and wanted to make sure is, I think it was in 2016, 17 in Hereford when that was implemented there, if those kids that started off there, went through their whole first couple of years with that program, and then they go to another school and it's completely dropped off, I don't think, I don't think anybody would want that. So, but it sounds like we have something kind of taking its place at the moment,
It does, and they are works in progress.
Right.
Both at the middle and high school.
We also have, Brian, which is in the infancy as well, the P to G, which you may have talked a little bit on Saturday about, which is starting at the middle school. But in that comp plan, you're going to see P to G is path to graduation. Sorry. And we've talked a little bit about that here in the committee, but right now Brian and I are working at the middle school, going through the training. I'm a little excited. This Friday we really get our middle school, and these are gen ed, these are willing volunteers. I think we have 8 or 9 teachers.
And not all teachers either, we have some other staff.
Yeah, we have different individuals, our student assistance counselor, our school psychologist, as well as gen ed teachers.
One of our secretaries.
And they're going to go through the, what?
One of our secretaries.
Are they on there? Okay. But they're going through the mentor training. So it's beginning, it's a 2-year program, it's a grant, but our goal, and that's why we actually have, so we have a parent on the, as well, and we also have Dr. Carpenter from the high school, because the goal is, just as you said, when they leave middle school, what happens?
Right.
So that this will phase right into, and there's a whole check and connect system, mentors, so it's just another piece. And that's at the beginning. This is the first year of that piece as well.
I would just like to point out too that just because we've been doing it for the better part of 5 or 6 years certainly doesn't mean that we've arrived. In fact, I have the privilege of having seen it begin and where we are now. And there's been lots of changes at Hereford, of course, over the last several years. So this really does give us a good opportunity to see what is working. And we're working with the IU, folks at the IU in our monthly meetings to kind of take a look at it and make sure that we're continuing to refine, and not just sit back and say, this is good.
Yeah, we got it. We're good.
Right. We've got work to do.
Right. Good. Because like you said, Sarah, your daughter coming home, bringing home that language, my kids do the same thing. It's a really good thing. It's a really positive program. I wanted to make sure that we weren't going to, be going along and off the cliff once they get to the next level.
Yeah, they get to make those connections. Like my son's in first grade up at Hereford, and he came home. It was probably a few weeks ago. He got a Proud 200 ticket, and he asked me. He's like, "Well, do you have Proud 200 tickets at the high school? I said, no, we don't. And then his very next question was like, well, what do you get? And then the best way I could, I kind of explained to him that we're working on the positive principal referral, and we're looking at it different, but he's already looking ahead to when he's in 9th, 10th, 12th grade, like, what am I going to get whenever I do that? So,
I'm soft pretzel.
All right. I'm good.
You sure?
I am good, yes.
Okay, great. Well, we don't have any community members here today. That would normally be who I'd ask next, but I can't tell you, I can't wait. So is somebody going to explain what some of our little stuff
Sure.
over here?
Well, so one of the questions is, what is it? What's in there? So we did bring a sampling of the materials if you want to check them out.
Georgie was playing with the puppets earlier.
Yeah.
There were teachers very upset when their books didn't have puppets in it.
The 4 or 5 is very sad.
This is my particular favorite.
So what do you do with the puppets? Can you explain?
So,
Go ahead.
So the puppets are used for dialogue. So many times, obviously, so
This is the one the
Yeah, let's-
kindergartners got Kim and I with.
let's say we're doing the frustration lesson. So the teacher will walk them through Puppy and Snail, and they'll have, I don't know how to put this on. I taught 5th grade, we don't get puppets. So Puppy and Snail will work through a conflict. And the kids will say, the teacher will ask, think about what Puppy said. How is Puppy feeling? How is Snail feeling? And the kids start to make that connection between what Puppy and Snail are saying, and they love it. I visited a classroom the second the puppets come out, the kids are hysterical. They love the puppets, but the puppets are used to kind of convey those relational conversations.
Okay.
And the bunny.
That's Calm Bunny.
And that's Calm Bunny. Now, we were in the hallway when we got reprimanded to be quiet, but the teacher was literally saying, is there something you need, do you need to pet Calm Bunny? And I'm telling you, the kids were almost sedate in the hallway because they were like, now I know I calmed down. It's that very tangible kinesthetic transfer of now I'm very calm.
The other nice thing the second step provides is principal toolkits, and I know these get used widely for a variety of things, morning announcements. The one nice thing that's in here for that restorative piece is how to have conversations with kids when behaviors occur, because we know that they will. There's also a reflection form, I don't know if it's in this one. There's a reflection form, a talk it over tool that the principal can use with the student to also reinforce those skills.
It's on Allie's table in
It is
her
on my
office.
Oh, it's on the table.
Yeah. I was so nervous the day I was there that somebody was going to come down. I'm like, I'm just going to use this. So, you can see that K and 1 come with puppets. 2, 3, 4, after that they don't. It is very upsetting to those teachers. But they may have done something else. We also printed for you, if you want to see the curriculum, this is a very short version of the curriculum, and this is the long version. You can take copies if you wanted to here. Second step is based in research. It's one of those research-based best practices. So if you go to their website, you can see all sorts of research articles. I printed just 2 of them for you if anybody's interested in taking a look at what the research says about how this program works. The other thing I'll say is kids don't know how to act when they come to school. I mean, you're in a new environment. Some of them, it's their first time outside of home.
Yeah.
And even think about the first time you're in a graduate class or you were in a high school class. You do learn how to act in that classroom based on what the teacher tells you. And I said on Saturday, kids don't say, oh, I need a routine, give me a routine, but they do. And they thrive from it. So knowing how to act, understanding those behaviors, I tell this story, it's actually awful. I was at Hereford last week, and I walked into a kindergarten classroom, and the teacher said, oh, we're working on empathy now, Mrs. Bast. We just had a kindergarten problem. And I said, well, what was your problem? One of our friends threw up in her mask. She said, so we're all practicing empathy. And I'm like, all right, I'll see you later. But they were practicing empathy for how this child must feel and how awful. And it was just that, then all of them said, I think I need to go to the nurse. And the teacher said, we're over-empathizing now. But, you know, I mean, so to have that language and you have to have that explicit instruction with practice so you know what the expectation is. Otherwise, how do we bring them down and say you did something wrong when they don't know what right is and what's wrong?
And just to add to what Kim is saying, which brought me back to when I was teaching and we did school-wide positive behavior supports, that is a major thing, and I think all three of the programs, when you enter kindergarten, it is so fine to come in not knowing what, you know, how to show manners, not knowing how to be polite or respectful. It's okay, because they intentionally, at that level, it is direct instruction. And for some kids, it's probably just like, you know, it's because they do know. But it's okay to come to school as a kindergartner and not understand or, you know, and have that, because part of these programs and school-wide is they teach it. It's direct instruction, which is, and they all connect that way, which is also nice.
I would assume that because so many children have had a lack of socialization during the pandemic, that this stuff even becomes even more important.
Yes. We talked to Allie and at the
What we were
beginning of the
talking about the
year.
other day.
I mean, there were first grade students who had never been in a classroom. So and they didn't know their way around the building. And so you had a group of students who potentially even in second grade had never, so for the first time you had K1 and 2 kids in a building who may have not ever been in a school setting before. This was totally necessary. The PBIS school-wide, the second step within the classrooms and then that common language in the building. I mean, I think it's still paying dividends.
Absolutely.
Because of that specific issue.
Right, especially in second grade, where you had half-day kindergartners who only went to school until March. And then,
And then
so then they had half a day, you know, through March, and then might have been out all last year. They were coming in like kindergartners, at least at our school. They were.
That's universal.
Yes. You know, it was, you know, they didn't even know, you know, like their own bubble yet. They didn't remember that from, you know, half a day at kindergarten 2 years ago.
So do you think that's the biggest shift, like pre and post-COVID, in the area of need?
I do, and I said, I mean, the kids look at you right now and they're so happy to get your attention. They want your eye, they're so thirsty for someone to talk with them and spend time with them and teach them. We looked at some data today. They are responding to instruction academically. They're responding to instruction socially and emotionally. It's an amazing thing to see. So yes, I feel like that was a gap. I think we're closing it. I feel like that very quickly with routines and the curriculum that's explicitly teaching with practice, they're moving. But yeah, that was definitely a significant change.
I agree. I think that, you know, that the majority of the kids are responding to all that. We have, without question, seen an uptick in kids who are experiencing much higher need. The trauma that surrounded it, just the mental health facet, plus all of the other variables, are so confounding for some kids that, you know, our counselors are hopping right now. There are a lot of kids who have a lot of needs, even more than normal, truthfully.
100%. 100%.
Well, we can't thank you enough for this. I think this was fabulous. Like, you've talked to me about second steps. It was so nice to actually finally like, see, oh, okay, this
We're just going to bring Calm Bunny to the board.
Bring a couple, I think that they
Would you be upset if Calm Bunny sat next to you?
Not at all.
I can see it now, all of a sudden it just pops up right here.
That'd be great.
I think the children in the crowd would be like, that's Calm Bunny.
Yes.
We know it's all down here.
We have chili. Ours is a penguin.
So it's all in here, the teacher took like.
And it is, it's very scripted. A teacher doesn't.
It's all
Yeah, I
right
was
here.
looking at that. It's wonderful. That's exactly what to say.
Yes, there is
all these different situations too. It's not like a one size fits all. It's like, oh, friendship problems. Here's the question you ask. As opposed to coming out of class. Here's the question you ask.
It is, they've done a nice job, and I think the scenarios they present, you know, I always find it interesting because even
Okay, so
showing them
there's
the
something
pictures
like
and
that.
having
So
them
when I was a den
sort
leader
of
at Scouts, they gave us a big book.
look into
And we
it.
read
What
the
could it
things,
be,
and
you
you're like,
know?
Okay.
Well, and as the
if I
skills
tweak this
progressed, one
here,
of our biggest
because
fears
the
for
kids
the
like
second
this
step
part,
middle level
I
was that it was
know
gonna
you're
be age appropriate.
Right.
Because you certainly can't ask a sixth grader to put on their attendoscopes, they're gonna laugh.
But if you get a little
The
flexible,
one thing we're
you
finding,
can-
and I implemented second step in 5 and 6 as a principal in my previous district, and one thing we
Right, you
found
gotta
was that
learn how to,
very
but I would imagine that as you go through it a little bit, you kind of get
the
some.
topics
And
progress.
if you could do
I
some
think it's 6th or 7th grade, it's
instruction
clear
while you're
concept.
applying.
I mean, that's all middle school.
That's-
So it's been coming out.
Not too much for you yet.
All right, so, just a housekeeping announcement. We are moving our pupil services and special education committee meetings to Thursday nights,
Thank you.
starting next month. So our next meeting will be in just like a little over 3 weeks because of that change, because we're going to be the third Thursday of the month moving forward. So our next meeting is February 17th. I'm sure we'll have a wonderful, topic of conversation, but we don't know just yet what it is because we haven't discussed that yet. But I really appreciated this, and I will be highly recommend. We did, yes, okay. So we'll have this on the website, right?
Yep.
And I'm going to recommend.
And we'll put the
and-
resources up too, you know?
This was great. I really thought this was a wonderful explanation of what it is, why we do it, how it affects education. So thank you very much. We really appreciate all the principals coming too, and assistant principals, taking their time out on a Monday night after a long day, I'm sure. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming.
Sure.
I'd like to actually, afterwards, just hear a little bit about your training for the restorative practices. If you I don't know if everybody'd be interested in that, but I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on it. Because you said you're in the middle of the class now, or are you completed?
So we did one, we've got another one coming up very shortly. And then we've got implementation that we're going to be working on, and then train the trainer over the summer, I believe.
All right. So maybe I'll wait until you're done then, if you've only got one class under your belt, but I'd really like to hear about that. 'Cause
Well, and, just,
I
as
do
we
not
go
get
through this,
training.
I would love to, show you in a pupil service meeting in the future, just what a circle would even look like. Like what that language is, what the questions are.
That would be great.
Because we would actually have, at that point, we'll have the.
Right, we would have our team.
Because that is not something that I get training at. I get social emotional
Yep.
learning training,
Yep.
but I don't get to learn restorative practices really. So,
We can teach you, Judy.
so I'd be
Clearly
very
do a
interested
role
in hearing
play.
about that.
Yes.
That'd be awesome, great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're it.
All right, well, unless any other board members have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Motion carries.
Look at that.
We got the Bill Scott. So moved.
Yes, so moved. Bill Scott.
So moved.
Oh, yeah.